When a woman loves, she gives you her heart. But when you betray her, she takes your soul. Kwame Mensah, a billionaire with charm and power, thought he had mastered the game. He had it all: money, women, control. He played with hearts, shattered lives, and never looked back. But the one woman he should have feared the most, his own wife. Because Zainab wasn't just any woman, she was the president's daughter, hidden behind a mask of humility, a woman who had nothing to lose, and a storm of vengeance to unleash. Now his empire is crumbling, his enemies are closing in, and the woman he underestimated is about to remind him, when a woman seeks revenge, she doesn't just destroy you, she makes sure you feel every second of your downfall. How does it end? Let's find out. If you love thrilling folk tales, heart-pounding stories that stir your soul, then you're in the right place. So what are you waiting for? Smash that like button to show your love. Hit that subscribe button to join our growing family of story lovers. And don't forget to tap the notification bell so you never miss an epic tale. Oh, and one more thing. Share this with your friends and family, because great stories are meant to be told. Let the storytelling begin. The night was thick with silence, but inside Zainab's chest a storm raged. She sat on the edge of the bed, staring at her reflection in the vanity mirror. Her deep brown skin glowed under the dim lights, her full lips slightly parted, and her dark almond-shaped eyes burned with fury. She had given everything to Kwame. Her love, her loyalty, even her identity. The world knew her as the simple girl from a struggling family, the quiet and respectful wife of the great billionaire. But the world was blind. They did not know that Zainab was not just any woman, she was the president's daughter. And tonight, Kwame would realize he had made the worst mistake of his life. She stood up slowly, her long, thick braids brushing against her back as she walked toward the window. Outside, the mansion glowed like a palace. The luxury, the power. It had been built on her devotion, yet Kwame had treated her like a forgotten piece of furniture. The whispers had started months ago, quiet at first, but growing louder with time. She had ignored them. A man like Kwame will always have admirers, she had told herself. But then came the evidence, the hidden phone messages, the late nights, the scent of strange perfume on his clothes. Then the final blow. 5 different women, all pregnant, and all carrying Kwame's child. Zainab's fingers curled into fists. The shame, the disrespect. He had betrayed her, not with 1, not with 2, but with half the women in the community. And these were not just random women. Nia, the sweet-faced journalist, Amani, the wealthy socialite, Sophia, the ambitious lawyer, Layla, the quiet girl from the local market, Jamila, the young model desperate for fame. Each of them had fallen for his charm, just as she had. But while they had been fooled, she had been humiliated. And that she could never forgive. She picked up her phone and dialed a number. It rang once. "Madam," a deep voice answered immediately. "Is everything ready?" She asked, her voice steady but cold. "Yes, madam, we are in position." Zainab exhaled slowly, her heart steady. "Good. Tonight we begin." Kwame leaned back in his leather chair, swirling a glass of expensive whiskey in his hand. He was a man of power, influence. Women wanted him, men wanted to be him. He had built an empire from nothing, rising from the dusty streets of Accra to become one of the richest men in Africa. And now he had everything. Well, almost everything. His wife had been acting strange lately, distant, too quiet, but she was smart enough to know her place. She wouldn't dare to challenge him, not when she depended on him for everything. He smirked. Women were all the same. Beautiful, delicate creatures who bent under the weight of money and power. The door to his study swung open. Kwame's smirk faded as he saw Zainab standing in the doorway, dressed in a long black silk dress that clung to her curves. Her dark eyes locked onto his with an intensity that sent a strange shiver down his spine. "Zainab," he said, taking a sip of his whiskey. "What a surprise!" She stepped inside, closing the door behind her. "I thought we should talk." "Talk?" he chuckled. "About what? How much you love me? How much you appreciate this life I've given you?" Her lips curled slightly. "No," she said softly, "about how much I know." The glass froze midway to his lips. His eyes darkened. "What do you mean?" Zainab walked closer, her perfume filling the space between them. "I know everything, Kwame, about Nia, Amani, Sophia, Layla, Jamila, all of them." Kwame's jaw clenched. "I don't know what you're talking about." Zainab leaned in, her voice dropping to a whisper. "And I know they're all pregnant." The room felt colder. Kwame placed his glass down carefully. "You're making accusations without proof." She tilted her head, amusement flashing in her eyes. "Proof?" She reached into her pocket and pulled out a sleek black tablet. With a tap, a video played. Kwame's face turned to stone. The screen showed him in bed with Amani, whispering sweet nothings. Then another clip, him laughing with Sophia, his hand resting on her stomach. More clips, more proof, until his entire empire of lies stood before him. Zainab clicked the screen off. Still denying it, for the first time in his life, Kwame felt something he never had before. Fear. Zainab straightened and walked toward the door. Before leaving, she turned back, her expression unreadable. "You made a mistake, Kwame," she said. "A very big mistake." Then she was gone. Kwame exhaled sharply, rubbing his temples. His mind raced. He needed to fix this before it spiraled out of control. He reached for his phone, dialing a number. "Nia, we need to talk." But outside, in the shadows of the mansion, Zainab's people were already moving. Tonight, Kwame would learn what it meant to betray the wrong woman. The first attack came at midnight. The scandal exploded on social media. Private photos, leaked messages. The news spread like wildfire. Billionaire caught in infidelity scandal, 5 women pregnant. By morning, Kwame's business empire started to crumble. His investors pulled out. His board of directors called an emergency meeting. The public turned against him. And this was only the beginning. Zainab wasn't done yet. She sat back, watching the chaos unfold, a slow smile forming on her lips. He thought she was just a wife. He forgot she was a queen. Kwame had always believed he was untouchable. He had built a fortress of wealth, power, and influence around himself. But as he stood in his study that morning, staring at the headlines flashing across every news channel, he felt something he had never felt before. Panic. His phone wouldn't stop ringing. His board of directors demanded an explanation. His investors wanted immediate damage control. But the worst part wasn't the business fallout, it was the women. One by one they turned against him. Nia, the journalist, was the first. She went public with their affair, painting herself as the naive woman who had been misled by his promises. She cried on live television, playing the victim perfectly. Amani followed next. She hired the best lawyer in the country and announced a lawsuit for emotional distress and child support. Then Sophia, the lawyer, released voice recordings. Kwame's smooth, manipulative words played for the world to hear. Layla and Jamila didn't have to say much. Their names alone added fuel to the fire. The world was watching, and they wanted blood. Kwame slammed his fist against the desk, his jaw tightening. He needed to fix this. He needed Zainab to stop this madness. He dialed her number. It rang, and then, "Hello, my love." Her voice was calm, almost too calm. "You're ruining me," he growled. A soft chuckle. "No, Kwame, you ruined yourself. I'm just clearing the mess." His hands clenched into fists. "Do you want money? Power? What do you want, Zainab?" The silence stretched. Then she said, "I want you to suffer." A chill ran through him. "You think you can humiliate me?" She continued. "You think you can play with a woman's heart and walk away untouched? No, Kwame, I am not one of your girls. I am the storm you never saw coming." She hung up. Kwame gritted his teeth, his pulse pounding. He had underestimated her, but he wouldn't let her destroy him. No. If she wanted war, she would get it. That night, the second attack came, but this time it was Kwame who struck first. Zainab arrived at her private apartment, a hidden penthouse where she had been operating from. She stepped inside, locking the door behind her, but something felt off. The air was too still, too silent. Then a shadow moved behind her. Before she could react, a strong arm wrapped around her neck, pulling her into darkness. Zainab's eyes fluttered open. Her wrists were tied behind her back, her ankles bound. She was in a dark warehouse, the air thick with dust and gasoline. Footsteps echoed. Then he appeared, Kwame. His suit was immaculate, but his face was no longer the confident, untouchable billionaire. His eyes burned with rage. "You really thought you could destroy me?" he hissed, crouching in front of her. Zainab lifted her chin, her expression unreadable. "I already have." Kwame's smirk faltered. "Check your phone," she whispered. His brows furrowed. He pulled out his phone, unlocking it, and then his breath caught in his throat. Breaking news: billionaire Kwame under investigation for money laundering and fraud. Kwame's world collapsed. The president himself had ordered an investigation. The government had frozen his accounts. His assets were under scrutiny, and his name was now linked to corruption, crime, and scandal. His hands trembled. "What did you do?" Zainab smiled. "You forget who my father is." His stomach dropped. "The president." Zainab leaned closer, her voice a whisper of steel. "You wanted war, Kwame? This is war." He staggered back, his mind racing. He needed a way out. He needed to stop her. But before he could react, bang! The warehouse door burst open. Armed men stormed in. Zainab's people. Kwame had made his move, but Zainab had already anticipated it, because when a woman seeks revenge, she does not lose. The armed men surrounded Kwame in seconds. Their faces were unreadable, their guns steady. Zainab slowly stood, shaking off the ropes as if they were nothing. Her dark, almond-shaped eyes glowed with something far more dangerous than anger, control. "Take him," she commanded. Kwame barely had time to react before strong hands grabbed him. "Wait," he shouted. "Zainab, we can fix this. You don't have to do this." She tilted her head, her lips curving into a cold smile. "Fix it, the way you fixed our marriage?" She stepped closer, lowering her voice. "The way you lied to me, cheated on me, humiliated me." Kwame swallowed hard. For the first time, he saw her not as the woman he had controlled for years, but as something far more dangerous. A woman with power, a woman out for revenge. The men dragged him toward the door. "You can't do this," he shouted, struggling. "I made you. You were nothing before me." Zainab's expression didn't change. She walked over to him, leaned in, and whispered in his ear, "Correction. I made you, and now I'll unmake you." With a flick of her wrist, her men hauled him away. But Zainab knew the game wasn't over. Men like Kwame never accepted defeat. He would find a way to fight back, to escape, to strike, and she was ready. Because she wasn't just playing a game. She was rewriting the rules. 2 days later, the world watched as Kwame was arrested. The president himself ordered the investigation to move forward at full speed. Corruption, fraud and tax evasion, every hidden crime of Kwame's empire was being uncovered. But something was wrong. Zainab could feel it. Kwame was too quiet, too calm. Even as the media tore him apart, even as his empire crumbled, he wasn't begging or panicking the way she expected. He was waiting. For what? The escape had happened at midnight. The police transport carrying Kwame never made it to prison. The vehicle was ambushed. The guards were found unconscious. And Kwame, gone, vanished. By morning, the news exploded. Billionaire Kwame escapes custody. Authorities on high alert. Zainab's breath slowed as she watched the news. She had struck first, but Kwame had survived. And now he was coming for her. Zainab stood by the floor-to-ceiling window of her penthouse, staring at the city lights. He was out. She had expected Kwame to fight back. He wasn't the type to accept defeat. But escaping custody, that meant he had help, powerful help. Her fingers tightened around the wineglass in her hand. Who helped him? Who was backing him? A soft chime interrupted her thoughts. Her private phone, the one only a few people had access to. She picked it up and answered, her voice calm. Speak, a deep voice on the other end. Smooth, calculated, dangerous. You made your move, Zainab. Now it's my turn. She froze. That voice. It had been years since she heard it, but she could never forget. Jabari, a powerful name, a name whispered in fear in dark circles, a ghost from Kwame's past, and hers. Her heart pounded, but she kept her tone steady. I was wondering when you'd crawl out of the shadows. A low chuckle. Oh, sweetheart, I never left. She swallowed the bitter taste in her mouth. Jabari and Kwame, two men who built empires out of lies, blood and betrayal. And if Jabari was involved now, it meant one thing. Kwame wasn't just fighting back. He was going to war. She had to move fast, because when Kwame came for revenge, he wouldn't come alone. Zainab lowered the phone slowly, her mind racing. Jabari, a man just as dangerous as Kwame, if not worse. He had been a ghost for years, a whisper in the underground world of power and crime. If he was stepping into the light now, it meant Kwame wasn't just running, he was rebuilding. Her fingers tapped against the glass. She needed more information. She needed to know where Kwame was hiding, what his next move was, and most importantly, what Jabari really wanted. Because she knew one thing for sure, Jabari never helped anyone without a price. Meanwhile, Kwame sat in a dimly lit room, his hands gripping a glass of whiskey. Across from him, Jabari lounged in a leather chair, his sharp eyes studying him like a predator watching wounded prey. You owe me, Kwame, Jabari murmured, swirling his drink. Kwame exhaled sharply. I know. Jabari leaned forward, smirking. Then let's talk about payment. Kwame clenched his jaw. I don't have time for your games. Zainab is smart, Jabari interrupted. Smarter than you gave her credit for. And now she has the power to destroy you completely. He took a slow sip before continuing. You need me, but I don't come cheap. Kwame's fists tightened. What do you want? Jabari smiled, but his eyes were cold. I'll let you know when the time is right. A chill ran through Kwame. He had escaped prison, but now he was trapped in something worse, Jabari's debt. And if there was one thing he knew about Jabari, debts to him were always paid in blood. The night was still, but danger moved in silence. Kwame and Jabari sat in a sleek black SUV parked outside one of Zainab's hidden residences. The city lights flickered in the distance, but here, in the shadows, war was beginning. Are you sure about this? Kwame muttered, gripping his gun. Jabari smirked, his sharp eyes gleaming under the dim light. "You still don't understand, do you? You don't fight a woman like Zainab with anger. You fight her with strategy." Kwame clenched his jaw. "And what's the plan?" Jabari glanced at his watch. "You'll see." Inside the penthouse, Zainab sat at her desk, reviewing files. Her informants had been feeding her intel, and the pieces were coming together. Kwame was working with Jabari. That alone was dangerous. But something wasn't adding up. Jabari wasn't the type to get involved unless there was something bigger at stake. Then a sound. The hair on her neck stood up. Footsteps. She reached for the gun hidden in her desk drawer just as, boom! The glass windows shattered. Smoke filled the room. A crash. A door kicked open. They were here. Jabari walked through the smoke like a ghost, his gun raised. Kwame followed, eyes burning with rage. Zainab was already on her feet, her own weapon aimed at them. "Brave of you," Jabari murmured, circling her. "But bravery alone doesn't win wars." Kwame stepped forward, his voice low. "It's over, Zainab." She laughed. Jabari raised an eyebrow. "Something funny?" "You two think I didn't see this coming," she whispered, tilting her head. The moment the words left her lips, gunfire erupted. Zainab's counterattack, Kwame and Jabari, barely had time to react. Her men had been waiting. Bullets rained and chaos exploded. Jabari dodged behind a table, firing back. Kwame grabbed his gun, cursing under his breath. Zainab moved swiftly, disappearing into the shadows. This was her game now. Jabari glanced at Kwame. Time to go. Kwame's eyes burned with fury. "No, I'm ending this." Jabari grabbed him by the collar. "Not tonight. Trust me." Reluctantly, Kwame backed off. They retreated, vanishing into the night. The final move, Zainab knew it wasn't over. Not yet. Kwame and Jabari would strike again. Harder. But she had the final piece of the puzzle, a secret she had kept hidden. A secret that would destroy Kwame, not just his empire, but his soul. She picked up her phone and made a call, released the files, and just like that, the final war began. 3 days later, the world was watching. News channels, social media, and the streets buzzed with one name, Kwame Mensah. Shocking revelations had surfaced overnight. Documents, videos, bank records, everything exposing Kwame's darkest secrets. Fraud, money laundering, illegal deals, even his human trafficking connections. Zainab had released it all. The government launched an immediate investigation. Businesses that once stood with Kwame cut ties in panic. His assets were frozen. His allies turned their backs. And just like that, the mighty Kwame Mensah began to fall. Jabari's betrayal, Kwame paced inside a dimly lit hideout, his hands trembling with fury. He turned to Jabari, eyes burning. "You told me we were untouchable," he roared. Jabari sipped his whiskey, unbothered. "Correction, I'm untouchable." Kwame's stomach twisted. Something was wrong. Jabari leaned forward, his voice dangerously soft. "Did you really think I was doing this for you?" Realization hit Kwame like a punch to the gut. Jabari had never been on his side. This was his plan all along. Kwame lunged, but Jabari's men grabbed him, slamming him against the wall. "You're a liability now," Jabari said, standing over him. And liabilities don't get to walk away. A gun clicked. Zainab's final strike just as Jabari raised his weapon. Boom! The doors burst open. Zainab's men swarmed in, guns blazing. Jabari cursed, dodging behind a pillar. His men fired back, but they were outnumbered. Kwame, bloody and bruised, crawled to a corner. His empire was gone. His power was gone, and now his life was slipping away. Zainab stepped through the smoke, her heels clicking on the floor. Unshaken, unstoppable. She stopped in front of Kwame, staring down at the man who had once controlled her life. "Look at you," she whispered. "The great Kwame Mensah. Now, nothing." Kwame coughed, his voice weak. You wouldn't kill Mum." She tilted her head. "Why not?" He laughed bitterly. "Because you still love me." Zainab's face darkened. "You're right," she said softly. "I did love you." She bent down, her lips inches from his ear. "And that's why you're still breathing." She turned away. "Take him." Kwame was arrested that night. His trial was swift. Life in prison. Jabari? He disappeared into the shadows, his motives still unknown. And Zainab? She stood on her penthouse balcony, watching the city. She had won. But deep inside, she knew this wasn't just about revenge. It was about power, and now she was the one who held it.